The afternoon sun burned over Ouagadougou. Dust rose from the streets, mixing with the smell of roasted peanuts and smoke from old motorcycles. Vendors shouted, children darted between stalls, life rushed forward. But among the noise, one man bent over a wooden tray, selling peanuts wrapped in paper cones. To strangers, he was just another poor vendor. But to Ibrahim Traoré, passing by with his convoy, that face carried a memory of a childhood friend, forgotten by the world, but not by him. The afternoon heat pressed down on Ouagadougou. Dust swirled in the air, carrying the sharp smell of gasoline and the sweeter scent of roasted peanuts. Vendors called out, children darted through narrow alleys, and the streets pulsed with restless energy. In the middle of it all, a man bent over a wooden tray of peanuts. His shirt was torn, his sandals worn thin. He poured peanuts into paper cones with slow, practiced movements, the kind of rhythm born not from choice, but from survival. President Ibrahim Traoré slowed his steps. His guards exchanged quick glances, uneasy, but he raised a hand. Wait. The convoy paused. He moved closer. At first, the vendor didn't notice. Only when a shadow fell across his tray did he look up. His eyes widened. The paper cone slipped from his hands, scattering peanuts across the dirt. His lips trembled as he whispered, voice breaking, "Ibrahim, is it really you?" For a moment, the noise of the street faded. Children stopped playing. Vendors froze mid-sentence. People craned their necks to see the president standing face to face with a poor peanut seller. Ibrahim's chest tightened. Before him wasn't just a vendor. It was Musa, the boy who once ran barefoot beside him, who shared bread when he was hungry, who shielded him from bullies in the dusty schoolyard. Musa Ibrahim said softly, his voice carrying both disbelief and recognition. Musa tried to rise taller, ashamed of his patched clothes, the sweat clinging to his skin. But his legs buckled. Then before he could fall, Ibrahim stepped forward and wrapped his arms around him. Gasps swept through the street. Phones lifted into the air. Some whispered, "The president," hugging a peanut seller. Others simply stared, unable to believe what they saw. Musa broke down. Tears streamed down his face as he choked out the words, "I thought you had forgotten me. I thought the world had forgotten me." Ibrahim held him tighter. His voice, deep and steady, cut through the silence. "How could I forget the friend who once lifted me when I had nothing?" The embrace silenced the market. Some wiped their eyes, others whispered blessings. In the middle of dust, sweat, and roasted peanuts, two boys from the same street met again. One now, a leader of a nation, the other broken by life's cruelty. But this reunion was only the beginning of a story no one on that street would ever forget. Before we continue with this heartbreaking story, I'd love to know, where are you watching this video from, and what time is it there? Comment below. I can't wait to read your answers. The palace dining room was quiet. Musa sat at the edge of a long table, a plate of warm rice and grilled chicken before him. He lifted the fork slowly, almost fearfully, as if the food might vanish if he ate too quickly. His hands shook. His eyes darted between the plate and Ibrahim sitting across from him. Ibrahim's gaze was steady, gentle but unyielding. "Musa," he said, voice low, "you were one of the brightest boys I knew. What happened to you?" For a moment, Musa stared at the glass of water in his hand. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint ticking of a clock on the wall. Then his voice cracked. "It started with Stella," he whispered. "My wife. At first we were happy. I was teaching at the school. Children called me Master Musa. I thought life was secure, but one day..." He paused, swallowing hard. "I came home early, and I found her in our bed with another man." The fork slipped from his hand, clattering against the plate. His shoulders trembled. "She didn't even apologize," he continued. "She told me it was over, that I should leave my own house, the house I built with my savings." Ibrahim's jaw clenched. "And you refused, yes. But she took me to court. She lied, showed fake documents. The judge believed her. I lost the house, Ibrahim. My house, my pride, my family all gone. He leaned back, eyes staring into nothing. His voice grew weaker. I fought. I spent everything on lawyers, every coin, every note, until there was nothing left. And when the money ran out, so did the friends. People I trusted crossed the street to avoid me. I was invisible. Or worse, I was a joke. His breathing hitched. His words came in gasps. I lost my job at the school. No income, no home, no dignity. I slept under bridges on cardboard, begged for scraps. Some days a stale piece of bread was all I had. Other days, nothing at all. Ibrahim's chest tightened. He remembered his own childhood, dusty streets, empty stomachs, the way Musa once shared his bread with him. And now this same friend was starving on the roadside. Tears welled in Musa's eyes. He pressed his palms against his face. Do you know the hardest part? It wasn't the hunger. It wasn't the cold. It was the shame. Children I once taught would pass me in the market. Some turned away. Others laughed. One boy pointed and shouted, "Look, the teacher is selling peanuts." The words cut like knives. The image of a respected teacher reduced to a vendor in the dust weighed heavy in the room. Even the guards by the door lowered their eyes. Ibrahim leaned forward. His voice was quiet, almost breaking. Musa, do you remember the day you taught me how to write my first letter? Musa lowered his hands, blinking through tears. You said, every word begins with A. Ibrahim's throat tightened. And now my teacher sells peanuts to survive. The room was still. The sentence hung in the air like a wound laid bare. Musa bowed his head. His shoulders shook as tears streamed down his face. I wanted to die, Ibrahim. Many nights I prayed not to wake up. I thought God had forgotten me. I thought you had forgotten me too. Ibrahim reached across the table and gripped his friend's trembling hand. His voice carried both steel and sorrow. How could I forget you lifted me when I had nothing? You gave me hope when no one else cared. And now, it is my turn to lift you. Musa looked up, his face streaked with tears. His lips trembled. You still call me your friend. Even now, Ibrahim's eyes glistened. He squeezed Musa's hand firmly. Friend, no, you are my brother, and I will not let you fade into the dust. The words fell like thunder in the silence. Musa broke down, completely sobbing into his hands. And Ibrahim knew in that very moment that this was no longer just a reunion. This was a turning point. The story of his old friend was about to change forever. The next morning, Musa tried to leave quietly. He slipped out of the guest room, clutching the torn shirt he had worn the day before. His eyes were downcast. He didn't want to be a burden any longer. But Ibrahim was already waiting in the hall. His voice was calm but unyielding. Musa, where are you going? Musa froze. His lips trembled. I don't belong here. This is not my world. People will laugh if they see me beside you. Ibrahim stepped closer, his tone firm. Enough. You once carried me when I was too weak to stand. You once gave me food when I had nothing. And now you think I will let you walk back into the dust? Never. Before Musa could protest, Ibrahim reached down and lifted the tray of peanuts from his hands. He set it aside. Then he took Musa's arm and began walking toward the convoy. Guards glanced nervously at one another, unsure whether to interfere. Vendors on the street stopped and stared. Phones rose into the air, recording every step. One man in the crowd muttered, "The president is dragging a peanut seller into his car." Another gasped, "No, he's saving him." Musa tried to resist, his voice breaking. "Ibrahim, please." "I can't." But Ibrahim cut him off. His words sharp, powerful. "You once lifted me. Now it is my turn to lift you." The street went silent. People felt the weight of the words. A shiver passed through the crowd. Some wiped tears. Others whispered prayers. With a firm grip, Ibrahim guided Musa into the back seat of the car. The convoy engines rumbled to life. Children ran alongside shouting, "He saved him! He saved him!" Inside the vehicle, Musa sat rigid, his eyes wide. He looked at his rough hands stained with peanut shells and dirt, then at the polished leather seats. He shook his head. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. Ibrahim leaned forward, his voice steady. "You deserve more than this, Musa. You gave your life to teaching. You built others while your own world collapsed. Now it is time someone built you back." The car pulled into the city hospital. Guards moved quickly, clearing the way. Nurses and doctors stared in shock as the president stepped out holding a street vendor by the arm. Some whispered disapproval. Others simply watched. A hospital administrator rushed forward, frowning. "Excellency, there are procedures, papers must be filed." Ibrahim's eyes burned. His voice thundered through the corridor. "Procedures? My friend is sick, broken, starving. And you speak to me of papers? Not today. Not ever again." The administrator froze. Nurses hurried to bring a stretcher. Musa was led inside, bewildered, his eyes glistening with tears. Outside, the crowd had grown. People pressed against the gates, murmuring, recording, waiting. The story of the peanut seller and the president spread like fire across the city. Inside, Ibrahim stood beside his friend's bed. Musa's breathing steadied as doctors checked him. Prepared medicine wrote charts. Ibrahim reached for his hand again. "You are safe now," he said. "This is only the beginning." Musa looked up, voice faint but certain. "You still believe in me." After all these years, Ibrahim's lips curved into a faint smile. "Musa, I never stopped." And for the first time in years, Musa closed his eyes without fear. The hospital room was quiet, but outside its walls a storm was gathering. Word had already spread through the city. The president had taken a peanut seller into the hospital. Crowds pressed against the gates, some cheering, others murmuring in disbelief. Inside, Musa rested on a narrow bed, avu lines running into his arm. Ibrahim sat nearby, his hands clasped, eyes burning with both anger and resolve. Moments later, a group of officials arrived, regional administrators, health directors, men in stiff suits who carried folders instead of compassion. Their leader cleared his throat. "Excellency," he began cautiously, "we cannot approve treatment without documentation. This man has no identity papers, no insurance. The system does not allow exceptions." Ibrahim rose slowly. His voice was low but sharp, cutting through the room like a blade. "No papers, no insurance. Then according to you, he has no right to live." The official shifted uneasily. "Sir, we must follow regulations. If we break protocol for one man, we will open the door for chaos." Ibrahim stepped forward, his eyes locked on the man's. His voice thundered, "Chaos. Chaos is letting a teacher starve in the streets. Chaos is forcing a man who once built this nation's children to beg for peanuts just to survive. If a piece of paper decides who lives and who dies, then burn the paper. Burn it all." The room went still. Doctors and nurses froze. Even the guards stiffened at his fury. Another official tried to speak. "Excellency, there are financial limits." Ibrahim slammed his fist against the table. The sound echoed like thunder. "Limits. We find money for new cars, for banquets, for foreign consultants. But we cannot find money for the men who once carried chalk and books. Shame a nation that abandons its teachers is a nation already lost." His words reverberated down the corridor. Nurses peeked from behind doors, tears glistening in their eyes. Some nodded silently, moved by the truth of his rage. One doctor, a man with tired eyes, finally stepped forward. His voice was shaky. "Excellency, I once lost my own child because I could not pay for oxygen. I never forgave myself. Today, seeing you fight for him, it reminds me why I became a doctor. Let me help." The tension cracked. A ripple of emotion passed through the staff. One by one, doctors and nurses stepped forward, defying the officials. "We will treat him," a nurse declared. "We will find the medicine," another said. "If the system blocks us, then we will break the system," added a young intern. The officials paled. Ibrahim turned to them, his voice like iron. "Write this down. From today forward, no citizen shall be denied care because of papers, because of insurance, because of bureaucracy. If a man comes here in need, he will be treated. And if any of you refuse, then you refuse me. And I promise you, Burkina Faso will not forgive." He seized a pen from the table, pulled a sheet from one of their folders, and scrawled his signature with swift, furious strokes. "This is law now. If you want to stop me, tear this paper in front of the people outside. Do it, and see what happens." The officials looked at each other, faces pale, lips sealed. None dared to touch the paper. Outside, the chants of the crowd grew louder. People pressed against the gates, waving, shouting his name. Phones streamed live the story, spreading beyond the city, beyond the borders. Ibrahim turned back to Musa, who lay staring in disbelief, tears slipping silently down his cheeks. "You are not forgotten," Ibrahim said firmly. "Not by me, not anymore." Musa tried to sit up, his voice breaking. "Ibrahim!" They laughed at me. They called me nothing. "And now you fight for me?" Ibrahim placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and strong. "You were never nothing, Musa. You were always the man who gave me hope. Today, I return that hope." The room erupted in applause, not the polite clapping of officials, but the raw, tearful clapping of doctors, nurses, guards, even strangers who had gathered at the door. For a moment, Musa closed his eyes, overwhelmed, and in that hospital room, with bureaucracy shattered and truth spoken like fire, a miracle had already begun. Days passed. The hospital ward, once filled with the stench of dust and exhaustion, now carried the clean scent of antiseptic and fresh linens. Musa lay in a proper bed, his body still thin, but color had begun to return to his cheeks. His eyes, once sunken and lifeless, now flickered with something faint but undeniable hope. Each morning, nurses entered with trays of food and medicine. At first, Musa ate shyly like a beggar, afraid of being chased away. But gradually, his appetite returned. The staff smiled at him, not with pity, but with respect. Ibrahim visited daily, often without ceremony, sometimes still in his military jacket, sometimes in simple clothes. He sat at Musa's bedside listening. They spoke of their childhood, of dusty football games, of running barefoot through the fields, of sharing bread when neither had enough. One morning, as sunlight streamed through the tall windows, Musa whispered, "I thought I would die forgotten." Ibrahim shook his head firmly. "No, Musa, not forgotten. Never forgotten." Tears welled in Musa's eyes. He pressed a trembling hand against Ibrahim's arm. "You still call me brother." Ibrahim's gaze softened. "Brother is not a word I use lightly. And you have always been my brother." News of the reunion spread beyond the hospital walls. Crowds gathered at the gates every day, chanting, praying, singing. Some brought gifts bags of peanuts, loaves of bread, handwritten notes of encouragement. The story of the peanut seller and the president became more than gossip. It became a symbol. Inside the ward, doctors continued their work. Musa's fever broke, his cough eased, his strength returned little by little. On the 7th day, he stood for the first time without support. His legs trembled, but when the nurses clapped, he smiled for the first time in years. That evening, Ibrahim returned. He found Musa standing near the window, gazing at the orange glow of sunset. His back was straighter, his shoulders no longer slumped in defeat. "You look different," Ibrahim said, with a faint smile. Musa turned, his eyes shining with tears. "I feel different. For the first time in years, I feel alive." Ibrahim stepped forward, gripping his shoulder. His voice dropped to a whisper, thick with emotion. "Thank you for surviving long enough for me to find you." Musa broke down, tears streaming freely. He embraced Ibrahim, his body shaking. For a long moment, they stood in silence, two men bound by history, by pain, and now by renewal. Doctors and nurses gathered quietly at the door, watching. Some wiped their eyes. A nurse whispered, "This is why we chose medicine, to see life return." When the embrace ended, Ibrahim bowed his head slightly, his voice steady. "You lifted me when I had nothing, Musa. Now I promise you will never be alone again." The ward erupted with applause. Even the patients in nearby beds clapped weakly, their eyes filled with joy. Outside, the crowd's cheering grew louder, echoing through the hospital halls. That night, Musa slept soundly, not on cold pavement, not under a bridge, not haunted by shame, but in a clean bed, surrounded by dignity, respect, and the love of a brother who had never forgotten him. For the first time in years, his dreams were not of loss or hunger. They were of tomorrow, bright open and waiting. And in that quiet hospital room, one truth settled over everyone who witnessed it. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not wealth nor power, but the revival of a broken man who dares to believe again. It was a quiet afternoon when the hospital gates stirred again. A woman in a plain dress, her jewelry gone, her face lined with worry, stepped hesitantly through the crowd. She clutched a small, worn bag to her chest. The guards moved to stop her, but she whispered a single name, Musa. Word spread quickly inside. Musa was sitting by the window when a nurse entered softly. "Someone is here to see you." When she stepped into the room, Musa froze. His breath caught in his throat. "Stella," he whispered. The room fell silent. Even Ibrahim, seated in the corner, leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Stella's voice trembled. "Musa? I have nowhere else to go. The man I chose over you, he left me. He took everything. Our house, my money, my pride. And now, I have nothing." Her eyes glistened with tears as she reached toward him. "Please, just for a while, let me stay with you. Forgive me." Musa's chest heaved. Memories surged, the betrayal, the laughter, the nights he slept under bridges because she had cast him out. For a long moment he could not speak. Finally he rose to his feet. His voice was steady, though heavy with pain. "Stella, I forgave you long ago, not for you but for myself. But I cannot forget. You chose your road and I chose mine." Her lips quivered. "Please, even just a room." Musa shook his head slowly. "This place, this life is no longer yours. My dignity is back, my peace is back. I will not trade it for the past." Stella's shoulders slumped. She looked down, tears dripping onto the floor. For once, she had no words. Ibrahim rose, his voice deep but calm. "Madam, the choices we make shape the life we must live. Musa's new life is built on truth, not betrayal. If you seek healing, start with honesty." Stella glanced at him, then back at Musa. The weight of her regret was written across her face. With trembling hands, she clutched her bag tighter and turned toward the door. She paused once, whispering almost to herself, "I had everything, and I threw it away." Then she was gone. The room was quiet again. Musa stood tall, shoulders squared, his breath steady. He turned to Ibrahim. "For the first time, I didn't beg. I didn't bend. I chose myself." Ibrahim placed a hand firmly on his shoulder. "And that, my brother, is true freedom." Weeks later, the hospital bed was empty. Musa had walked out not as a broken man, but as someone reborn. His steps were steadier, his voice stronger. With Ibrahim's support, he moved into a small home near the city center, a place not of luxury, but of dignity. But Musa didn't stop there. He carried with him a vow: if someone once lifted me, then I must lift others. With Ibrahim's encouragement, he opened a small community classroom, in the very neighborhood where he had once sold peanuts. The walls were simple, painted with bright colors. Old desks were gathered from storage, chalkboards were cleaned, and children filled the room, eyes wide with curiosity. Every afternoon, Musa stood before them with chalk in hand. His voice was firm, yet warm. "Knowledge is the only treasure that cannot be stolen," he told them, "and I will share it with all of you." The children listened, some scribbling letters for the first time, others struggling through numbers. Musa guided them patiently, remembering his own journey. No one was too poor, too slow, or too forgotten in his classroom. Parents began to gather at the door, watching. One mother whispered, "That is the man who once sold peanuts here." Another replied, "And now he teaches our children." News spread quickly. People began calling it the School of Second Chances. What started with a dozen children grew to 50. Musa never turned anyone away. If they had no pencils, he found them. If they had no shoes, he reminded them that learning was not about shoes, but about spirit. One evening, Ibrahim visited quietly, slipping into the back of the classroom. He watched Musa teaching fractions with chalk-drawn circles, children laughing as they shouted answers. When the lesson ended, Ibrahim stepped forward. The children gasped, recognizing their president. But Ibrahim lifted his hands gently. "Today is not about me," he said. "Today is about him." He pointed to Musa. He was once forgotten, but he rose. And because he rose, all of you will rise too. Musa's eyes glistened with tears. He bowed his head, humbled. Ibrahim's voice carried strong and steady. "No one is truly poor if we still know how to lift each other. And no one will be left behind if we remember that dignity is our birthright." The room erupted in applause, tiny hands clapping, parents wiping tears from their eyes. Musa stood taller that night than he ever had before, not as a peanut seller, not even as a survivor, but as a teacher reborn, carrying light into the lives of others. And in that small classroom, hope spread like fire. The sun dipped low over Ouagadougou, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. In the courtyard of the small community school, children laughed as they chased each other, their voices rising like music against the evening air. At the center stood Musa, no longer a broken man with a tray of peanuts, but a teacher surrounded by life, by hope, by the future. Ibrahim walked beside him, their shoulders brushing their bond, unshaken by time or hardship. As the last light of day fell across the scene, Musa whispered almost to himself, "I thought my story was over." But it was only the beginning. Ibrahim placed a hand on his shoulder, his voice low, steady. "The greatest wealth is not gold, not power, but friendship that endures even through the dust of years." The children clapped, parents smiled, and for a moment, the whole neighborhood felt lifted. And so, a president and a peanut seller stood together, not as ruler and subject, but as brothers, reminding the world that kindness can rewrite any story. If this story touched your heart, comment 1. If not, comment 0. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories like this.